Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the OnePlus 7T Pro and see how this particular phone holds up in 2024. Now, the big thing I would definitely tell you about this particular phone is that it's an interesting device to say the least. This was a stem off the OnePlus 7 Pro that came out like a couple months before this, and I definitely do think this was a very interesting phone. They had this McLaren edition for this phone as well, which was very cool, so wicked, and I think I ended up buying that phone. And overall, I definitely do think it holds up fairly well in this day and age. There are some reasons why I wouldn't recommend buying this phone though, and we'll talk about that throughout this whole entire video. If you do want to pick up some phones that I would recommend buying this year though, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same exact time. Now, starting off with the outside of the OnePlus 7T Pro, on the front side of this phone, you're basically getting a 6.67-inch fluid AMOLED display. It's a 90Hz panel, and you can see that there's some interesting stuff going on here. So for one, you're getting that big curved display. It's very, very nice, and it was a 90Hz panel, which was very, very kind of rare back in 2019. You had this like top pop-up camera that basically was giving you at the time, and I do think this was a very nice thing going on for this particular phone too. Just having that like top pop-up camera like right at the very top was a very, very nice thing, and it was an added benefit for this type of phone as well, because it was like still to this day no phones really had it. It didn't really have a whole bunch of display, it was just a display, which was crazy. You were getting a USB Type-C port on the bottom, no expandable storage, nothing like that, which made this phone a little bit different than the Samsung Galaxy S10s at the time, but still was like good. You were getting that standard glass back on the backside with a triple camera setup. Now, it's a good looking phone, but it was missing out on some things that some phones had nowadays. So this phone had no wireless charging inside of it, which was very weird. It's no reverse wireless charging either, which some phones had at the time, and no IP certification as well. So this was some really interesting choices that OnePlus kind of made at the time. Again, now a lot of their phones have those types of features, but at this time that was one thing that was kind of missing out on these particular devices. Now on top of that, and some other big things to keep in mind, this type of phone was also basically giving you some standard type of stuff, nothing else super crazy going on here too. So this type of phone, you're basically getting like a good feeling phone. The camera side was the interesting thing though too, because you were getting this triple camera setup. It was a 48 megapixel wide, 8 megapixel telephoto, then a 16 megapixel ultra wide camera. And the thing I'll definitely tell you about the camera side of this particular phone is that in a lot of ways I would say that the camera side on this thing still holds up fairly well for the most part from a hardware side, but when it comes to the actual usability side, it's not really doing that well. And the reason for that is because the camera itself just really, it's like a kind of dated, I don't know the best way to describe it, it's just not that great of a camera anymore, and that's just kind of how I can imagine it. The thing with this camera is like you're getting 4K at 60 on the back, which is nice, but only 1080p at 30 on the front. And it's funny because for so many moments, Samsung, Google Pixel, iPhones were able to do 4K at 60 on the front and the back. Google still didn't even do 4K at 60 on the front of this particular year, but OnePlus for so many years kind of just dropped the ball in the camera, and that was something that was kind of weird. With this particular phone, I still think it's a good phone, but the camera side of things just isn't really holding up that well in my personal opinion when it comes down to it. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there a little bit as well. Now on top of that, another big thing to keep in mind here with this particular phone is with its software longevity. This is probably one of the bigger problems going on with this particular device when it comes down to it. So with the OnePlus 7T Pro, the thing with this particular phone is that, it's just not going to be lasting that long when it comes down to the software. It was kind of outdated with Android 12 as far as I know. So it didn't even really get those many versions of the software, which was kind of a downside. And if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, the fact that this thing was already missing out on so many versions of software is already kind of sad. And once again, I would hate for you to go and buy a phone like this if it's already going to be outdated with software. And that's kind of what's going on when you're purchasing one of these types of phones. So just kind of keep that in mind. The software performance of this device just really isn't there anymore. And that's just kind of the problem that you're getting within this particular device. So that kind of leads into the performance as well. And this phone had that Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 Plus chipset inside of this particular phone with 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM, which was basically the same type of level of performance that you'd basically be getting inside of the most common phone of that year, especially the Android side. And I definitely do think, in my personal opinion, that was a very nice thing going on for this particular phone. I still think in so many ways the performance of this particular device does hold up fairly well for the most part, and I do think this in and of itself is a very, very interesting thing going on for this particular phone. It's not a perfect device by any means, and I do think in some ways the performance really isn't that great, but I will definitely tell you, if I'm going to go ahead and pick up a phone like I mentioned before, I do think this is a very decent performing device for how old it is. But again, it's not a good performing device anymore. Now I'd hate for you to go and buy a phone like this if it's already going to be outdated, and that is kind of what's going to end up happening within this particular device. So just kind of keep that in mind, but that's kind of how these particular devices hold up in 2024. And I'll tell you, I don't really think the OnePlus 7T Pro is worth buying anymore. I do think there are significantly better phones that are worth buying more than this one. Things like the, even current generation OnePluses, but the Google Pixels, Pixel 6 and above, those types of phones, the Samsung Galaxy S21 and above. I probably wouldn't recommend buying the OnePlus 7T Pro in 2024. So that pretty much covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out, Swollen.